As you can tell, we're recording our first meeting tonight. It's our trial. So I would ask the board members, try to remember to keep your microphones on when we're talking. And for public comment, please remember to speak into the microphone so we can get a good recording of everyone tonight. We need to approve the agenda.
Chair Morgan, I'd like to ask to amend the agenda.
Okay.
Under business 7.1 policy committee, I'd like to add additional rules of conduct and take action on that tonight.
Could we get a roll call vote, please, to add additional rules of conduct to the business portion? Or we have to, do I have to motion and approve it? Okay. Could I get a motion for that?
So moved. I'll second.
All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
I would like to approve the agenda, make a motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we'll have to do roll call vote. Is she online? Okay, we'll just take a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Christy Morgan,
Aye.
Penny Love Hensley,
Aye.
Mary Ann Duncan Cole, Megan Dugan,
Aye.
Marie Coffey,
Aye.
Olga Hodges,
Aye.
and Vikram Kotwani.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll move into chair announcements. First, I wanted to say that it looks like on the agenda, the time limit for public comments got moved to 2 minutes. It was supposed to remain 3 for tonight so that I could tell you all, because I know that you guys take care in preparing your comments. So tonight, we'll leave it at 3. If you're finished ahead of time, it would be nice if you would wrap it up so that we can get everyone in. I know we have a lot more people than we can fit into the hour. And the reason for moving it to 2 is because we want to hear everyone that wants to speak. So if we reduce it by 1 minute, we can fit in more people. We'll leave it at 3 tonight. If you're finished early, it's great if you would give your time to someone else so we can try to get as many people in tonight as possible. I want to thank the library for hosting us here tonight. I know it's a lot of work to get the room ready and set us up, so thank you very much. And thank you, Foundation. I know that some of you are here again. I really appreciate you coming to our meetings and joining us here. We'll move on to the reports. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's not skip that. I will start with public comments. So Mary's going to call it 5 people at a time. I would ask that we please, if we could, no videos, no showing us videos or playing recordings for us. We want to hear you guys. We want to hear what you have to say. And no applause, no clapping between speakers, please. Also, if we could be respectful of each other. I know that there's a lot of passionate comments. We're not going to agree with everyone. Just no talking and laughing over people when they're having their comment time. That would be appreciated. We won't be answering any questions. This is your time to talk to us. And there will be a timer on the screen behind you. You'll hear a noise when it's finished. So Mary will call it 5 people at a time. But when you come up to talk, if you would please state your name again for us.
I'm going to start with our one online virtual comment from Wendy M. And then after Wendy will be Catherine Gardner, David Alvey, Gary Wilson, Justin Allen, and Keely Ray.
So if you could go ahead and stand over here and then just get ready to step up to the microphone. And then as one person finishes, she'll call the next person in line. Thank you.
All right.
Hello.
Thank you, Wendy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Wendy. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I am here tonight because I'm tired of watching this happen. It's not okay and it's not acceptable. There are certain groups of people that hate others and want to exclude them. It's called othering. Othering is putting people in an out group and then assuming they're all the same. This typically is done to vulnerable groups of people and is done with the intent of dehumanizing them. Dehumanizing is reducing the value of the people in that out group, in the opinion of the in group, to less than human. This othering is essential in order to justify their hate and ultimate fight against them. The othering justifies excluding these people from dominant groups. This fact alone is why they hate inclusion and a diversity. This is why they hate the equity policies of the library. They do not like the efforts to rehumanize these groups of people. Rehumanizing is the opposite of dehumanization. It's giving dignity and human qualities back to the people who are at risk of having it taken away. That's what Fort Vancouver Regional Library is doing, and that is why they don't want it to continue. Thankfully, you do not have to do what they want. I am again asking the library board to follow their own equity policies. Those policies successfully uphold those policies and rehumanize those in our community that are targets. They need support and we are here to give it, and we aren't going anywhere. I'm thankful to be a patron of a library district that is progressive and inclusive. You all are doing great work. Thank you for all you're doing for our library system and with the public. Our children deserve it. Our future depends on it. Thank you.
Give me 1 second. Margot Logan. You just go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Good evening. My name is Catherine Gardner, pronoun she, her, and I'm a resident of Vancouver. So when I hit 4th grade, a joke started going around my Christian grade school. It was in 2 parts. It opened with the question, "Are you gay?" Which, as a sheltered 10-year-old in the early 90s, I wasn't totally sure what gay meant, but the way it was said, I was sure it was something I probably didn't want to be. After replying, "No," for what other choice was I given in the circumstance, the perpetrators of this joke presented the following. "Do your parents know you're gay?" Obviously, given the setting, responding in the affirmative was out of the question, but a negative response or denial was no good either. They had you trapped. Ha, gotcha. This witticism taught me many things: shame, confusion, fear of being othered. It also taught me that bullies crave power and control, even if they gain it through utter nonsense. The jokesters were half right. While slogging through my remaining years of religious education, it became apparent that I'm not gay exactly, but also not straight. Not having reflections of myself or view of the amazing, vibrant, resilient LGBTQIA community made my youth very difficult. It was a time of few, if any, events for queer youth, and it felt lonely. As a parent now, I want as many diverse resources as possible for my child to bolster and support however she's feeling and whoever she is. And I want that for every child and family, along with the option to choose that for ourselves. This is my 3rd library board meeting. I've heard a lot of the same tactics used by those kids 30 years ago. Sure, the arguments have shifted a bit, have gotten more complex. I don't want to say elegant because they're not, but the goal is the same: shame, confusion, and othering, power and control through utter nonsense. But this time, it's not a dumb joke. The queer community is under attack, figuratively and literally, because of tactics like these. It is under attack at this very forum, month after month. I've heard the argument, there weren't all these gay and trans people back in the day. Kids these days are being forced to be that way. To which I say, my dudes, we've always been here. The reason there seem to be so many quote unquote more trans and queer people these days isn't because of recruiting or grooming or whatever the buzzword of the moment is. It's because the world has become incrementally and in defiance of the bullies, kinder and more welcoming to trans and queer people. Passing laws or making a ruckus at a library or even enacting violence on us isn't going to magically make us go away, but it will continue to make life more dangerous for the entire community. The library should be a safe space for everyone. A library should be a place of comfort and challenge and change. I ask the board to stand up to the bullies and genuinely consider bringing a drag queen story hour back for those who would like to utilize it. Thank you.
We have Colleen Sailors.
Hey, David Albee, pronouns he, him, they, them. Last month, I kind of wanted to flaunt this out and I asked, other people to stand up and do the same when they decided to comment. There were 3 of them, so that kind of lets me know what's really going on out here. How often some of us are at this library participating in events, as well as others in our community, and who just kind of wants to stand up and complain. Excuse me. Isaac Asimov said, any book worth banning is a book worth reading. Ben Franklin said, if all printers were determined not to print anything until they were sure it would offend no one, there would be very little printed. My personal favorite, Kurt Vonnegut, said, I hate it that Americans are taught to fear some books and some ideas as though they were diseases. Throughout history, and this is to the people who would advocate removing books about inclusion or our existence as a queer community. It's been tried before, right? Nazis did it. Tons of fascists and dictators throughout the world have tried to do it. It's not going to work. We're always going to be here. At this point, fighting for survival has been encoded into our DNA, right? We will not go back. We will not allow our children to be pushed back, to be silenced, to live in fear. We will continue to fight for them. To the board, I'd like to say thank you for your commitment, for your time. I know it is tough month after month, hearing the same people rehash the same rhetoric. So I'd like to thank you for your patience.
Our next speaker in the line will be Len.
My name's Justin Allen. I guess here's my library card right here. Oh, let's see. My name's Justin Allen. Here's my library card right here. Last month was my first meeting when David invited me to show up, and I was honestly flabbergasted. I spoke before any of the teal shirt people did, so I wasn't sure what their actual arguments were, so I tried my best to predict it. And I was completely unprepared for every single bit of evidence from every single speaker to have absolutely nothing to do with what actually happens at the Drag Queen Store Hour events. There's been some 40, 43 months or so of these people have been talking about things, and it kind of just, what they've been telling you is about as true as those vote no signs that we've all seen and giggled at over the last month and a half or so, talking about fentanyl being in our local grade schools. And it's wild. It's just wild to me that we can let a small group of people say utter nonsense once a month, when the truth is, the reason that we haven't been doing these things is that the next time it happens, we're going to get a bunch of angry, violent men doing what happened last time at the 2nd and 3rd Drag Queen Story Hours, where people showed up taking pictures of children, screaming at them, talking about putting their pictures on the internet to find their parents. This is some bad stuff. David mentioned the Nazis banning books. One of the first Nazi book bannings that took place in the 1930s was at the German SBS Center. Essentially, it's a school that studied sexuality, trans rights, things like that. About 90 years ago, one of the first Nazi book burners was trying to make trans people as though they had never existed. And like it or not, that's what these folks are trying to do now by disenfranchising the gay community, saying that, oh, men wearing dresses can't be role models. And it's messed up. Sorry, it takes some time to not think of swear words to say about these issues. I would highly encourage the board to please, please, please find a wonderful person to read books to kids. That's what we come to the library for, and not to, well, whatever you're going to hear next.
Our next speaker in line will be Mike Johnson.
Hello, my name is Keely Ray, and I'm an outreach librarian for FVRL. While I'm speaking as a taxpayer patron today, a lot of what I have to say is going to come from my professional role as a librarian. Being a part of outreach has given me the honor of working closely with the diverse people within our communities. I look around tonight and I see a room that, while large, cannot possibly contain all of these unique individuals, nor the more marginalized or underrepresented groups that many of them are a part of. I can also say that their voices matter just as much as those who have been able to attend this meeting in person or virtually. I want to address the board and remind them that library work is not easy, and probably not for the reason you may think. As board members, you agreed to support staff in combating censorship and providing equal access to library materials. In so doing, you agreed to the same thing that all library workers agree to and strive for, putting aside your own biases. Public libraries serve everyone in their communities. Part of that job entails finding equitable ways we can help provide services to groups and individuals that are not properly represented within the community as a whole. They have just as much of a right to find materials, programming, and information specific to their needs at their library as anyone else here tonight. When you took your seat, no matter your reasoning, you agreed to help the library keep equitable access to everyone, and not just those whose lives mirror your own. There are mass amounts of people not here tonight for a myriad of reasons that are relying on you to think of them. It is not our job to police what information people have access to. It is our job to provide it and give our community members the autonomy and respect to determine what is right for them. Thank you.
Our next speaker in line will be Jude Jacobs.
Thank you, library board members. I know each of you inherited the issue of Drag Queen Story Hour from your predecessors. It was not any of your doing, but you have been saddled with it nonetheless. Some comments recently have said your equity policy warrants having more Drag Queen Story Hours. I don't believe it does, but if you do, and due to some updated facts since the equity policy was last written, there is nothing to stop you from updating that policy. Updated fact 1, last month during the Library Foundation's executive director, Mr. Smithrood's presentation, he was asked a direct question by the board, and his answer was very insightful and extremely impactful and enlightening. Are you experiencing difficult responses because of the things we're dealing with the Drag Queen Story Hour? He answered, it's interesting you should ask that. We do experience that quite a bit in certain situations. We just did this year-end mailing, and some of the replied cards came back with notes written on them that they weren't supporting the library this year because of that. When asked if he's seen that change over the last few years, he mentioned, we don't see them changing their mind. We just kind of find our supporters where we can find them and we keep going. He was further asked, but are you seeing like a dead end with certain relationships, that this has been a deal breaker? And he said, yes, there were donors who were longtime donors who walked away because of this issue. Mic drop. That was huge. After the meeting, I walked over to Rick and I shook his hand. I told him I appreciated his honesty and told him a lesser man would have tried to skirt around the issue and avoid answering the question. I commend him for his integrity. Whatever you're paying him, it's not enough because he's admitting Drag Queen Story Hour has made his job much more difficult. Updated fact 2, we have 4,600 people who have pledged to vote no on the next library levy. You have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure the adequate funding of the library. Your fiscal management policy also states you are to constantly review library services for appropriateness. Leads me to updated fact 3. I imagine most of you had not seen this photo of FVRL's first Drag Queen Story Hour performer until last month's meeting, and were no doubt shocked that he had a YouTube video having sex with a penis coming off a school bus, portrayed as children coming off a school bus. With these updated facts, you have the power to make changes to policy, and after all, change is the one constant. I also want to thank this board for last month deciding to start videotaping the board meetings starting this month for accuracy and in part to keep our local Columbian newspaper accountable for printing outright lies, as more than one of us pointed out last month's meeting and you as a board witnessed in December. When I asked the Columbian for a correction, they send the video of the library, knowing full well there was none. Now there is. I feel vindicated. Thank you.
Our next speaker in line, Emily Losness.
Good evening. I'm Margot Logan, and thank you to the board. The new board, I just feel like that you care about everybody, and I appreciate that. I have my library card. Anyone wants to see? I was at the library today, and I'll just read this because I know time is of essence. So I'm Margot Logan. For 6 years, I was a group life counselor with 15 to 18-year-old teens. For 16 years, I was a CPS and then a daycare licensor investigator. And for my last years, I've been an expert witness in civil court lawsuits that with children who were harmed, sexually abused, and sometimes made dead. So I'd like to request the Vancouver Regional Library to obtain a copy of Nick Bryant's book for each library so that kids today, I'm not tall enough for this. Yeah, thank you. Look, I'm on my tiptoes. Thank you so much. Thanks. All right. So Margot Logan requests the Vancouver Regional Library to obtain a copy of Nick Bryant's book for each library so that kids today who are being trafficked have a story of how, out of the Franklin cover-up, 2 of the kids who would not lie, no matter what the FBI did to them, survived, and not only survived, thrived. FBI put Alicia Owen in prison for 9 years, and still she would not lie to get out. It was her faith in God that kept her strong. Alicia's story of how she outsmarted the FBI is a story for any kid to read. Paul Benassi's story of being made into a multiple personality will resonate with some kids as he made it out for a better life. Kids traumatized today need a story of hope and resilience to see a better future. So I'm asking to get Nick Bryant's book, The Franklin Scandal, a story of power brokers, child abuse, and betrayal. You don't have it in this library because I checked today. You do have the Franklin cover-up, and thank you for that. It's John DeCamp, and it's about the sex trafficking out of Franklin. And what I know is that the Finders, the Verse Network, and then, oh, okay, thanks. Then Franklin, the next network, they just flop over. So in Franklin, they covered up, and with Epstein, they've covered up. So the sex trafficking network is still out there. Ghislaine Maxwell, she was only one of the pimps. We don't know who any of the other people who actually abused those children were. So the question is, who are the next ones? Who's the next Epstein? Who's the next Larry King? Time. Thank you. Thank you so much to the board.
Next in line will be Sage.
Hi, I'm Colleen Sailors. I am a mother. I've gone to this library for all of my life. Anyway, I am against the Drag Queen Story Hour. I'm a Christian. I don't hate on anybody. I think the library should be open for everyone, but I don't think that it's right to exploit kids. And that is what Drag Queen Story Hour does. And along with the child trafficking and all of that stuff, it just all meshes together. So I just ask you guys to consider not bringing back Drag Queen Story Hour. Thank you.
Next in line will be Gogo.
Okay, I've never used a microphone before in my life, so this is going to be probably kind of weird. My name is my name is Len. My pronouns are he, him, and they, them. And for full disclosure, I'm an employee at the Fort Vancouver Regional Library District, but I'm speaking as a public citizen because I am a citizen. Oh, because I am a citizen of this community. My comment today is essentially just reading from the ALA's Access to Library Resources and Services for Minors, because I think it's very important. Really, in reading this, the things that stood out to me are the fact that School and public libraries are charged with the mission of providing services and resources to meet the diverse interests and informational needs of the communities they serve. Services, materials, and facilities that fulfill the needs and interests of library users at different stages in their personal development are a necessary part of providing library services and should be determined on an individual basis. Equitable access to all library resources and services should not be abridged based on chronological age, apparent maturity, educational level, literacy skills, legal status, or through restrictive scheduling and use policies. Libraries should not limit the selection and development of library resources simply because minors will have access to them. Additionally, the mission, goals, and objectives of libraries cannot authorize libraries and their governing bodies to assume, abrogate, or overrule the rights and responsibilities of parents and guardians. As libraries and American value states, we affirm the responsibility and the right of all parents and guardians to guide their own children's use of the library and its resources and services. Libraries and their governing bodies cannot assume the role of parents or the functions of parental authority in the private relationship between parent and child. Libraries and their governing bodies shall ensure that only parents and guardians have the right and the responsibility to determine their children's and only their children's access to library resources. Parents and guardians who do not want their children to have access to specific library services, materials, or facilities should so advise their own children. And I think this is important because libraries should take a stance against censorship. They should be a place for everyone in the community to have programs and services that interest them, not just catering to one single group. I appreciate the board for what they do. I appreciate libraries everywhere for their stance on censorship and trying to be equitable and inclusive for the people like me that live in the community as well. Thank you.
Next in line is Quill Onstead.
Thanks to the board members this evening for allowing me to speak. My name is Mike Johnson. I live in Washougal. It's been stated that the library did not fund or spend taxpayer money on Drag Queen Story Hour. That is not true. The Vancouver Friends of the Library paid $150 to the drag queen for each performance. However, the taxpayer footed the bill for all the library workers who worked the room that day. All told, the story hour was about 2 hours, including setup and cleanup afterwards, and about 8 library employees estimated at $20 per hour, not counting Amelia, who was there and is salaried. But if paid hourly, that makes the total close to $100 per hour. Not even counting Amelia, you have 8 times 2 times $20 per hour equals $320. And of course, you have additional employee benefits based on hours worked plus employer paid FICA wages would put us in the vicinity of $450. Again, not counting Amelia's salary. Add her to the total along with her fringe benefits, and you are in the vicinity of $700. Now, add to that the 22-inch posters and all the smaller flyers printed up advertising the performance, along with web page design and putting it out on the web and calendar, not to mention the added building expenses, etc. And we are pushing $1,000 paid by the taxpayer, which pales in comparison to what the Friends of the Library paid the drag queen. That ends up being a real drag for the taxpayer. Another argument is it's up to the parents and guardians to decide. Well, is it not true that some parents and guardians expose the children in their care to things most, if not all of us, would agree are harmful, like drug abuse, physical abuse, or sexual abuse, or mental abuse, including exposing them to concepts their young minds can't and should not have to try to comprehend, like gender confusion. Let's stop enabling. Please don't have another drag queen story hour. Thank you.
Next in line will be Kay Ellison, and I apologize. We are closing today at 7 p.m. So there will be announcements at the 45-minute and I think the 10 and the 5. So I apologize. I didn't give a heads up about the 30-minute. If that does occur and you prefer not to speak over it, I can pause the timer and you can continue when the announcement is done. Sorry for the interruption on that. I think I mentioned Kay Ellison is next. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Jude Jacobs and my pronouns are he, him. When I was in second grade, I started shelving books at my school's library using the Dewey Decimal System and helping others use the card catalog. Thankfully, we're a little beyond that. But for me, it was a way to get away from bullies. It was a safe place. Later on, I found the middle school library, and that was amazing. I found books that I had never seen before. And then I got older, and I also I have great fond memories of, participating in summer reading programs through the Vancouver Library and all of those other little steps. But finding books that had other queer characters in them was one of the most important things for me as far as figuring out who I was. And it wasn't something that I grew up with. It was something that I figured out once I had started questioning who I was. I found those books, and it was amazing because I had never seen that kind of representation. I had never seen a character that was like me. And that was inclusion for a kid who was still figuring himself out. These days, I mostly love accessing board games, audiobooks, the Libby Kindle app. I still love the library, and also I still have my queer community. I have outlets that are humans. And also, I recently got an updated library card with my new name after my legal name change. And I was treated with respect by the people at the library, and I was able to feel like I could trust the library to be inclusive, and that matters. Professionally, I work with trans youth. I work to create spaces where they can feel safe and included. And I hope that you guys are also looking to find ways to include queer youth in our community, because they exist. And we want them to be safe. We want them to be happy. We want them to not want to hurt themselves. And that's a real thing. The rates of suicide, the rates of suicidal ideation among queer youth is high. It's not great. And a lot of that is due to bullying. It's due to areas where they're not accepted. And so I want the library to be part of the solution as well. Thank you.
Next in line, Phil Cronenbush.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Emily Losness, and I use she, her pronouns. And Dave, here's my library card on my keychain. All right. So for the folks here who are protesting Drag Queen Story Hour, I just want you to ask yourselves, have you ever attended a Drag Queen Story Hour that you weren't protesting? And do you know what it actually consists of? And now I want you to internally note, if you have your kids in public school, they're in the Boy Scouts, you're a member of the Catholic Church, or if you have ever had a kid in foster care. So some statistics for you. In 2004, a church commission report revealed that more than 4,000 United States Roman Catholic priests had faced sexual abuse allegations in the last 50 years, in cases involving more than 10,000 children, mostly boys. The United States Department of Education Office for Civil Rights ran a report of over 97,632 public schools in the country, where 14,152 cases of sexual assault had been reported by students in the 2017 through 2018 school year, which is a 53% increase from the previous school year. In 2019, Time magazine reported that between 1944 and 2016, at least 7,800 suspected sexual assailants abused 12,254 boys in the Boy Scouts. A Johns Hopkins University study found that children in foster care are 4 times more likely than other children to be sexually abused. And those who live in group homes experience an abuse rate 28 times higher than those of other children. Meanwhile, LGBTQ youth are more than 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their peers. The 2022 Trevor Project National Survey on LGBTQ youth and mental health found that 45% of LGBTQ youth considered attempting suicide, including more than half of trans and non-binary youth. When these youth have supporting families, this number reduces by upwards of 40%. Those of you who are here tonight protesting Drag Queen Story Hour, how do you think you being here spewing hatred towards what you don't understand affects how your children think you'll respond if they ever came out to you? Do you think they'd feel supported, loved, and cared for unconditionally? There's never been documented abuse by a drag queen onto a child taking place at a Drag Queen Story Hour. Statistically speaking, and I know that most of y'all don't want to hear this, your children are far safer around drag queens than they are around priests, teachers, scout troop leaders, and foster parents. So I just encourage those of you here protesting Drag Queen Story Hour to ask yourselves, is this really about the safety of the children in our community? Or is this about pushing your beliefs and morality onto others? Thank you.
Our next speaker in line will be Dan Duringer.
Hello, my name is Sage. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am non-binary, transgender, queer, and a local resident here in Vancouver, and this is my library card right here. I just want to voice my support for the LGBTQ two-spirit community here in Vancouver and across the country, and I'm here in support of Drag Story Hour. I am a practicing Buddhist, and in my spiritual practice, we teach the concept of funi, two but not two. It essentially encapsulates the non-dualities of life, mind and body, self and environment. Anything that you think of polar opposites as just this or that, and teaches that there's a full spectrum between there. I find validation and recognition and a home in my spiritual community and my teachings. They're affirming, they're supportive, they actively support the LGBTQIAP+ community, alphabet soup, the community, I like to call it. I just want to voice that we are here, we are queer, we're not going anywhere. There is more than one spirituality that is practiced in this country, in this city, and imposing the values of one so that all must comply to one belief system is wrong. It's illegal. We have a freedom to express ourselves how we like, to dress how we like, to do what we want with our bodies, you know? Consent is taught in comprehensive sex ed classes. It's not taught in churches. It's not taught by the dominant religions of this country. The queer community advocates for safety, consent, informed consent. And this is all a tangent because it doesn't have anything to do with Drag Story Hour. Literally, we're just, not even we, but as queer people, we want to be ourselves. We want to stand in our authenticity. We don't want to be targeted for being who we are and doing what we love. We are far too often conflated with criminals, with sex offenders, and as our previous speaker just explained so eloquently with hard numbers and facts, that statistically we are some of the least likely to be what they think we are. Thank you.
Next on the mic, we have our next in line will be Sue Regan.
Hello, on the mic is Gogo. My name is Gogo. My pronouns are they, them. I had a lot of things that I wanted to say that I prepared, but I'm going to speak from my heart. And before I get into, obviously, a lot of us are here to talk about Story Hour and wanting your support in doing that and not feeling afraid because of dissent from people. I have had so much anxiety of coming here and walking in and seeing people all grouped together wearing shirts about stuff that doesn't even really involve them. And I'm an adult. So I try and imagine what children feel like right now in the climate of this world. They are something that we all have to accept is that we don't know what it's like to be a kid right now, as much as we think that we do. There's more information that is available to them, whether it comes from the library or not. But in their schools, they're not safe. In their homes, they're not safe. The library should be that safe place.
because everyone has a varied experience of living their life. We're all literally different beings. And when people who are ignorant of a culture want to repress that culture, historically, that's not good, to say the least. But I am in support of representation. We all hear it. Representation matters, and not just for people represented, but for people who are ignorant of cultures to learn about them in a way that doesn't make them feel unwelcome. Because dissent is coming from fear of unknown. And the things that people are sharing on the internet about, oh, this thing happened in Texas or but whatever, what's happening here. I have been to story times here, and honestly, I don't know. I want to say, like the other speaker said, how many of y'all have actually been to a story hour and sat and listened to a performer read a story to a kid? Drag and queer experience is not inherently sexual. And saying that drag queens are all predators and whatever, grooming people, is like saying that everybody who's a dancer is an exotic dancer. Everyone has their lives and they do their jobs for what they're doing. In story time, it is time to be with children and to be joyful and be yourself and see that there are other people maybe like you. Because obviously y'all aren't going to story time, but queer people are, because yes, we exist. We have always existed and we will keep existing.
Next in line is Tiffany Hine. And just a reminder, we have about 20 minutes left of public comment.
Hi, my name is Quill Onstead and my pronouns are they, them. I'm here to speak in support of Drag Queen Story Hour as a genderqueer member of the community. 7% of people regret having children. 6 to 30% of people regret getting their knees replaced. The regret rate for transition surgeries and trans-affirming care, a whopping 2%. For any other medical treatment, a 98% success rate would be considered a miracle. But because 2% of people choose to detransition, the other 98% of cases should be ignored. By the way, the most common reason people cite for detransitioning is a lack of support from their friends, family, and community. But Drag Queen Story Hour isn't about medical statistics about trans-affirming healthcare. It's not about brainwashing children into questioning their gender identity. It's about introducing kids to the radical idea that not everybody looks the same. Not everybody acts the same. And not everybody acts the same. And that's okay. These people are still worthy of being treated with respect and with kindness, which is not something we often see in this room. Drag Queen Story Hour is a vital program that teaches kids about gender identity in an age-appropriate manner. Parents who do not approve of Drag Queen Story Hour do not have to bring their children to Drag Queen Story Hour programs. Parents also have the right to monitor and restrict the materials that their children view and check out from the library. Please allow Amelia Shelley and the staff of FVRL Libraries to present Drag Queen Story Hour and to live up to the district's ideals espoused in its equity statement. Thank you for your service to the community.
Just want to review our speaker order. We have Kay Ellison, Phil Cronenbush, Dan Duringer, Sue Reagan, Tiffany Hine, and then the next speaker will be Jessica Cole after that.
Hi, I'm Kay Ellison, and I have one of those very old green library cards, and I don't have it with me because now I memorize my number, 232. So I love the library. and I live here in Vancouver. I want to thank the library for being a place for all people and having books for everyone. I want to say that if a parent doesn't want their child to be at a drag queen story hour, don't bring them. I was curious about a drag queen story hour, so I came, and it was in this room. And I want to say the drag queen sat right there facing that direction and just sat in a chair and read a few books to the kids. There was no singing, no dancing, and the person was totally clothed. I mean, they had lots of clothes on. And I mean, more than me right now. I want to thank the library for being part of my life and part of all the people's lives. And you can choose what you want to do at the library. And I support Drag Queen Story Hour. I'm also a mom and a Christian.
Next speaker in line is Don Seaver.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Phil Carnabush, Orchards. I just wanted to read to you a small piece from our RCWs. No one has really made mention of that, of our codes in the state of Washington that we all have to apply to, regardless of how we feel about things. And it basically comes from RCW 9.68A.001. It's legislative findings and intent. The legislative findings that the prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse of children constitutes a government objective of surpassing importance. The care of children is a sacred trust and should not be abused by those who seek commercial gain or personal gratification based on the exploitation of children. The legislature further finds that the protection of children from sexual exploitation can be accomplished without infringing on a constitutionally protected activity. The definition of sexual explicit conduct and other operative definitions demarcate a line between protected and prohibited conduct and should not inhibit legitimate scientific, medical, or educational activities. The whole section goes deeply into the exploitation of children, particularly with pornography. One of the books, of course, in the library is Genderqueer. And I think if people would look at page 167, they would definitely agree that's pornography, horribly. It basically says something really important to all of us, that no matter how we feel about something or that we love the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, and all the things that we enjoy in this country, the protection of children trumps everything. And we all have a responsibility to that, no matter that we want to put money in the library or a church or whatever we're doing. We have to protect children, and the people and parents want to protect their children, whether we have an equity policy here at the library, doesn't matter. It still has to add in the fact that we have to protect children. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker in line is Leon Goodman.
My name is Dan Beringer. In the RCW that was just read is a good example of a balanced approach. We want to give freedoms to people in our society, but we also have to protect members of the society. And that's what I want to suggest, that what we have often and what we experience is an overemphasis on personal freedoms in society. And I think you as a board need to at least be aware that there's a lot of pressure to give emphasis to personal freedoms, and that is over the protection of others and individuals in society. And societies from Aristotle's time recognized that the general welfare of the community was the purpose for society, and with St. Thomas Aquinas, it was the common good. And even in our preamble to the Constitution, it talks about the general welfare. So there's got to be a balance between personal freedoms and the protection of people in society. The conversations here was very expansive on gay rights. And Drag Queen Story Hours, the issue is gender dysphoria in children. And it's not all of, or at least we're not talking about that really in these discussions, all of the gay issues. We're talking about children that can have a predisposition to for gender confusion. And that's what our objection is, I think, for most of the people objecting to drag queen story hours. It's just not appropriate for the library. In society, we can honor all people and respect all people, but that can be balanced. In fact, we have a responsibility in a civil society for the common good, and that is for respecting all people. So you as a board member or as a board here, I encourage you to take a balanced look at this. We want to respect everybody in society, but you've had me before you here with the Life Back group talking on the pornography issues that the library was offering. And Fort Vancouver Regional Library took this rather extreme position that they had to provide pornography. And the courts, U.S. Supreme Court ruled no. And I think the same thing goes here, that we have to respect everybody, but you do not have to provide situations and facilities for every opinion in the world. Thank you.
Our next speaker in line is Denny Anderson. And as a reminder, we have approximately 10 or about 12 minutes left for public comment.
Okay. My name is Sue Regan, and I'll probably take less than 3 minutes, but I'm here to address the board, and I don't have a library card. My husband does. I quit going to the library when my daughter was 6 or 7, and that is when the library allowed pornography on the internet, on your computers. And I had my whole family there and my daughter in towed, and we walked past a boy on a computer that had full body naked lady there. Probably the first time she ever saw that. And I was mortified because I too thought the library was a safe place and was unguarded. And as a consequence, my daughter was exposed to something that I was really opposed to. So you all have a job and a position here to protect children, and all children, not just my children, but all children, those kids that can't think yet for themselves, that can be influenced by visual stimulation and whatnot. It is your responsibility. God has put you there for a force for good. And that means for everybody in this room, all of you. God has a purpose for you and for me. If you're sitting here, if you're breathing, you have a purpose. And we honor that, every single person here. So I just pray that you, the board, will be very careful in how you deal with this issue. But I think our kids need to be protected. You have all the books that everybody has access to. I think that's enough. Thank you.
Our next speaker in line is Randy Ross.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Hine, and I just want to say good evening to all the Clark County and Cowlitz County members here tonight. This is my first meeting I've ever attended. I've seen many emails come across, and the reason why I'm here tonight is to express my concern about Drag Queen Story Hour. Our children are our future, and between the ages of 0 to 5, they're very, very impressionable, and they do most of their learning by visual. And I think it's ironic how in the last 3 years, we've all been bombarded with so many so many things that have been happening in the world. And one of them happens to be with the push of the agenda of equity and CRT in our schools and in our high schools. Which brings me to this. Vladimir Lenin was a Russian revolutionarist. He was an imperialist / Marxist. And what he said was, give me 4 years with your children and I will teach them what I have sown, and it will never be uprooted. So therefore, if our children from 0 to 5 are coming to Drag Queen Story Hour and their most impressionable time is learned by visual, then we are impressing our children to question what they are seeing and what they are experiencing. And you're right. If you don't want your child to go to Drag Queen Story Hour, then don't. And I suggest you don't. But our public library is for the public, and we should respect all of the voices here tonight in regards to what their needs, their desires for the public. I would be alarmed if I were, I'm sorry that the LGBTQIA have experienced violence or derogatory remarks or criticism or any of that. I would never condone that, not in my public library or in my home or in my church. I would never condone that behavior, but we're talking about children. We are adults and we need to take them into consideration. And I say no to Drag Queen Story Hour. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jessica. My pronouns are she, her. I just want to thank you very much for the time that you give us during your board meeting. I really appreciate it. I went to a program up in Battleground recently, the Chinese New Year celebration, and that was amazing. So thank you. And I really hope they come back. It was really cool. We happened to be in a location where we had an awesome view. At one of your other programs, I got to hear about Bayard Rustin, who I already knew about. He was a gay civil rights activist. He is the reason why the March on Washington happened. Without him, that wouldn't have happened. He was a mentor to Martin Luther King Jr. and guided him on a way to be peaceful, which personally resonates with me. And I love him. And I learned that on your Canopy app, or the Canopy app that I could get through you for free, there is a movie on him. So I will be watching that. So thank you. I'm very sorry that sometimes you might have to be in the position of choosing money over supporting marginalized patrons. That's a very difficult position to be in. But I ask you to please support your marginalized patrons. I know that's a terrible situation, but I would ask that you put people over money. I have been to one of your drag queen story hours. I've been to a drag show, and I wasn't sure there's going to be time. So I've been to a drag queen story hour and I've been to a drag show, and they're very different. Just like I've let my kids watch Robin Williams movies like Aladdin, but not like the rated R ones. When my kids were teenagers and adults, usually, except for one, they'd always watch scarier movies than me. They all now watch scarier movies than me. That's just something I personally can't handle. So I know we're all different, and my kids are less sensitive than me. So I've always been like more boxing them in. And I'm like, watch that stressful stuff without me. Most of my family, a lot of my family are Christians. A lot of them were pastors or pastor kids. And majority of them do support the queer community and queer culture. And I'm very appreciative of that. And even accepting people that were LGBTQ when it was still illegal to be LGBTQ decades ago. So we're all different. Some support, some don't. Please give us all options that are open to all of us especially to marginalized communities. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Dawn Seaver. Just want to say at the start, despite some of the previous comments, that this is not about hating, othering, excluding, or banning anything or anyone. This is about having performers of sexualized adult entertainment, and drag is a sexualized form of adult entertainment, having them interact with young children and pushing gender confusion on impressionable minds, period. I came across a recent article where a mother described her journey from a social justice organizer and true believer in transgender ideology to a skeptic who is deeply regretful for allowing her son to believe that he was a boy trapped in a girl trapped in a boy's body. She described how she and her wife raised their boys as gender neutral because they believed that they were following the righteous path of social justice. So when their oldest son was 4 years old, he came and he asked them, am I a boy or am I a girl? And they said, you can choose. So he decided that he was a boy. He decided he was a girl. And they went out and they bought him girls' clothes, changed his name, and allowed him to transition socially and live like that for about a year. It was only when the second son came out and decided that he wanted to be a girl too, that they began to question if they maybe had made a mistake. She described the moment when she could see her belief in gender identity as a belief for the first time. She said it was like a pin came out of her head, causing the whole belief system to collapse. She told her friends that she felt like she was leaving a cult. She said, how else could I describe being in something so deep that I could not see outside of it? At least when you are religious, you realize that you hold religious beliefs. You understand you have a faith and you consciously practice it. This was different. I had been in something that I did not know I was in. And in that moment, I came out of it. This also illustrates why it's a problem when we just say, well, let the parents decide. Because there are well-meaning parents who think that they're doing the right thing, but they've been sucked into this insidious agenda. And it's up to us to expose this and to protect more children from being harmed. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, board, for allowing me to come up and speak. My name's Leon Goodman, and I'm against the drag queen reading hour. And I'm a Christian, and what I'd like to do is pass out a little Bible to each one of you.
Oh, we'll take them. Sounds good. Thank you.
So I just want to let you know that the LGBTQ community, we are not here to hate you or to victimize you any more than you already are. We're not here, you are adults. You have a right to choose the way that you want to live. In fact, the Bible even says that we have free will. That means that you can choose what you decide to do. And to talk about spirituality, I believe in the Bible is the holy word of God. And God specifically says that there are consequences to this type of lifestyle, but that lifestyle is for adults to choose how they want to live. But children, on the other hand, they are vulnerable, as already been stated, and they do not have the awareness or the maturity to make that type of confusion. God has distinctly, in our DNA, has given us each. He has created us male and female. But if an adult that chooses to do something other than that, that is their choice. God allows us to live our life. But there is consequences according to the Bible. But we're here to protect the children. That's why I'm in opposition to this, because they do not have the maturity to make that type of decision. And to have public funds and to have what I would call a perverse type lifestyle to be led to them and to teach them, if they choose later on in life to follow that type of lifestyle, then that is their choice. But to have a government entity to fund this for that type of lifestyle, even though they say this is not this is not what I would call appropriate and everything. And I think we need to protect. In fact, the Bible even says that, you know, it's better to have a millstone wrapped around your neck and to be drowned in the sea than to hurt one of these little ones. So God takes it very seriously. But like I say, we're not here to condemn them, so adults, on what they choose. And I'm wearing a teal shirt, and I'm not here
Time.
to say anything negative about what adults choose. Thank you very much.
Time check, board chair. We are at an hour. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hey, my name's Denny Anderson, and I have been here before. I've probably been to about 9 of these, and I have spoke at least 3 or 4 times. And I understand there's some new people here on the board, and I thank you very much for serving. This is my grandkids' library card, okay? And I accompany them when they go to the library. They're 5, 6, and 8 years old, and I look at the books that they pick up, and I have actually found books there in the library that are very perverse in my opinion. When I pick up a book that says, here's a story of Auntie Uncle Drag Queen Hero, and it's right out in front there for all of them to see. Now, I have to say, the last time I took my grandkids to the library, I looked through the books there, and I didn't find any. So they've either been taken off the shelf or they've been hidden. I don't know, but I'm very wary of that situation. I've listened to the arguments here of the drag or the queer community, and I'm sorry that you are beat up and ostracized. Okay, I really am. Okay, and as a Christian man, I am to accept everybody here, and I think Leon Goodman said it very well over there. You're to be accepted as human beings. You know, God loves you just as much as he loves me, and that is the bottom line. But the idea that you have to promote Drag Queen Storybook Hour in this venue, on this stage, in a government taxpayer, they don't go together. And I've heard the arguments here, libraries and this issue, they don't go together. They just don't fit. I don't know if this Darcells is still being done downtown, if they still have, if it's still in business there. But if you want to take your kids out there and expose them to Drag Queen Storybook Hour or whatever, bring them down there. The library is no place for that. It's a neutral place. There should be none of this indoctrination, period. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Randy Ross. I'm from Orchards, and the third Drag Queen Story Hour held here at the Vancouver Community Library, where the drag queen performer Onalicious Mercury asked an 8-year-old boy what he wanted to be when he grew up. The child said, Spider-Man. And Onalicious said, Princess Spider-Man? Teaching the boy to question his gender. I have to ask the library board and the executive director, when is it ever in the best interest of a child to question their gender? No one has ever attempted to answer that question because they can't defend it. This is not what the majority of tax citizens in Fort Vancouver want our taxpayer-funded library to be promoted. Recent studies have shown that children and adults who severely question their gender are 40 times more likely, not 40%, but 40 times more likely to commit suicide or have suicidal thoughts than those who do not question their gender. That is the current rate. Why would you want to expose and even lead an innocent 3 to 8-year-old child down this path? Also, note that affirming the gender confused does not reduce the higher rate of suicide or suicidal thoughts, as one person had previously mentioned at a different meeting. And the scientific case in point, Sweden, a gender-affirming country for 50 years, that's since the 1960s, had in the cohort study conducted in 2011, the same higher rate of suicide or suicidal thoughts of the gender confused as that of those in the US at the same time. Affirming the gender confused is not the answer, and teaching healthy, innocent children ages 3 to 8 to question their gender is not in the best interest ever. Please stop this insanity of Drag Queen Story Hour, please.
Thank you all for your public comments. It was really nice to hear respectful comments tonight. I appreciate that. I want to ask the board, do you have any questions or comments that the board would like to make? Oh, okay, go ahead.
I have a question to
references to us providing pornography. Did I hear that correctly? Somebody say that? And I don't mean that it was, when people had access to it on the computer. Somebody said, okay, can I hear more about that from our people, our staff, not patrons? I'd like to learn more about that, please, when that happened and what happened. It did. Sounds like it did, yeah.
There was a time at FVRL back in the 1980s when FVRL had Playboy magazine in circulation. That's true, yes.
Can you tell us how that was conducted? Why did it go away?
I have no idea. I wasn't here at the time.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. You're
So I can't
much younger
speak to
than
that. Yeah.
But when did we get rid of that, or is it what happened there? Is that something the ALA decided to ban? This is just like news flash to me.
I apologize. No, I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Right.
I just have to interrupt. Our meeting is being recorded, and anything that is not happening on the mic is not happening, but this is all part of the public record, and this is not an appropriate time to have a back and forth with our members of the audience, unfortunately. Thank you.
Chair, what I would request is if you would like to know more about this, I'd be happy to research it and provide that information to you.
That's fine. That's just news to me.
Thank you. And we're still working out recording everything too. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay.
I wanted to, I had a question about the RCW that was quoted. Can I please hear what that was? Did somebody record that? Do we have it in our minutes
We have the recording. We can review after the fact.
to share it with me? Can I hear it from the person that said it? Can you just tell me what it was?
That RCW was 9.68A.001, which is the intent of the child exploitation laws of the revised codes of Washington. There's also a section before it, which was from 1959, has been there from 1959, which is RCW 9.68, which is basically gives the library supposedly exclusion. But obviously they added in, because of the internet and everything, the exploitation issues. And you can see as you read, I think they kind of sort of conflict with one another. Actually, the exploitation issues are very clear, actually quite. So you have to do some research a little bit, but you'll see the two sections.
Thanks for those numbers.
Thank you. I'm closing public comments and we can move on to reports. We'll start with the branch report. Brandon Cruz.
Hello, nice to see you all. I'm Brandon Cruz. I'm the branch manager for the Vancouver Mall Library. We are mighty, but we are also very small. But we're also like a unicorn because we're very unique. So I'm very happy to be able to talk to you about my branch and get to brag a little bit how great we are.
Brandon, can I ask you to just pause for one moment?
Yeah.
Sorry, for those online, we're just waiting for some folks in the audience to leave the room before we proceed with our presentation. Thanks for your patience, Brandon.
We could start.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So as you can see, this is the Vancouver Mall Library. We are located at the east end of the Vancouver Mall on the second floor down by JCPenney's. The next one. This is some of my staff. As you can see, Renee looking the most librarian out of all of us there and putting us all to shame. My staff is amazing. And I have to brag about them because they keep us going. They keep us interactive. They always have a good attitude, are always happy to deal with the patrons. One of the things we really emphasize is greeting everyone who comes in and saying goodbye to everyone who goes leaving. And they do a great job of that, making everybody feel welcomed, and doing all the multitude of things that you have to do in a day to keep a small branch running. So we have them, and then we have the rest of my staff, who I think shows a nice dichotomy of my branch. While we do the standard things and all the library things, we also like to have a lot of fun. They get along really well, and we have a great time providing the best service that we can to the patrons. One of the ways we do that is through our social media. And in one of these pictures, you can see we even dragged in the deputy director into our social media posters. It's a great way for the staff to interact with some patrons and let them kind of know what's going on and what we're doing, and promote the branch. And this year, okay, next one, we got to do programs again. So excited to be doing programs again. This program, Altered Art, this was a program that was actually planned for the Saturday after we were going to close down. So we'd been sitting on this for 2+ years, just waiting to get going. And it's a great opportunity. We brought in some paintings that we'd purchased, and the kids are able to paint new ones over the current paintings. And one of the joys of being a branch manager is you get to keep some of the examples that your staff do. So that dog wizard thing now hangs up in my office, and it is super fun. The next program we did was our dinosaur terrariums. So people got to come in, make these fun little terrariums with some rocks and some little plastic dinosaurs. And it was a great opportunity for the kids to come and play around, get their hands dirty, and make these little, different stratas of rocks and stuff like that with the little dinosaurs roaming around on it. And then this year, we also got to do we started back with story times, which we are super excited about. We've partnered with the mall, and we are actually doing these story times at their little free lending library space. So it's this nice little space. It's a little bit farther down from us, but it works out great for us because our branch is very small, and doing a story time in the middle of it kind of disrupts the entire branch. So doing it here, it not only gets us out into the mall and lets other people see us. We get a lot of families that come down to us and see us doing the story time, hop in, sit in the story time, and then pop over to the mall, to the library, get a library card, get some books, and it's great. Even just that little space and difference is some great outreach opportunity. And next we did May the 4th. We had some ruffians come by, but we kept them under control. Luckily, they returned their books. Everything was nice and cool and easy. And then the big one is, of course, the next one, which is Summer at Your Library. We got to do some cryptids. This little girl over there made the cutest little story about monsters running around in the forest, and it was super adorable. And she had to run around and find all the little cryptids that were hiding out throughout the library. And it was just a really great opportunity to get some more people involved. And then the next one, this is one of the unique opportunities that we get because we were in the mall. So Booville is a massive event put on by the Clark County Parks Department. They estimated somewhere around 600 to 800 people came this year. The mall gets packed. There's tons of people. We were able to partner with the foundation. They came out and gave out books in front of the library. And it's great. The next one is also, it's more, you can kind of see some of the lines going out and around of people coming to get stuff, and just a great opportunity that if we weren't in such a unique location, we wouldn't be able to get, but it's free and they're coming to us. It's awesome. And this year, next one, outreach. Got to go do outreach this year, which was a big deal. We actually went to 4 different schools this year, which apparently is the most schools that the Vancouver Mall Library has gone to in the kickoff of summer reading. So it was very great. Schools were obviously very excited to get us back in there, since this is the first time that they can have people come in and do stuff there. And so we were able to partner up with some of the different schools to promote Summer at Your Library. and really just get back into the community and remind people, yes, we are here, we're open, come visit us. The branch has gone through some fun changes this year too. So we got rid of our AMH machine. We had this little dinky 2-slot thing, which took up that entire staff area right there. Remove that, put that table in, got some computers there. It's a new staff work area. It's great. And it opens up a lot. Our back work area is very, very small. It's probably about as long as your 3 tables right there. So giving us some more staff area to work, it was a really great opportunity. We also got to do some painting, which was super nice. It really brightens up and livens up the building. Getting a new splash of color in there, getting that green, is we're all white walls there. And so the green color really kind of works well with the blue that's all on the other walls and isn't just a kind of a dead wall right there. And then the big one that I'm super excited about next is my desk. I am so excited about this. Our desk, it was bad. It was a little bean shape and you couldn't open 2 doors at the same time and you're standing right next to each other. So now we have a desk with multiple levels, which is great for accessibility so that we can help all of our patrons with their different needs and kids. And then actually get some space. You can open the doors. You can have 3 people standing at it at once, which is awesome. Very excited about that. We also got, we're partnering with the Vancouver Art Studio that is right next to us. And so we cleared off this wall, moved some of the things that were there, and now we have rotating art that hangs up there, which really brightens up the library, gives it a real nice a feel. Plus is another great partnership with a local organization that we're literally share a wall with. Right, next one. And my signs, I love my signs. So we found this is the correct name of the library, which was not the case before we switched up the signs. We also got a peace pole. So in our kids section, AKA the middle of our library, there's this pole and it has in English, Spanish, Russian, and Chinese. This message, really just an attempt to build some more community and show some people that, you know, these are all things that we're here and we're here to help you. Next one. And then, so we're a library, we're in the mall. It is hard to explain to some people that we are a library and we're not a store. So we got some more signs. We got this gorgeous one that sits outside. So it's nice and big. Yes, we're FVRL libraries. We're a library. And then this nice blue one, or it's clear blue because the window right behind us. So when people are standing at the desk and we have to tell them 2 or 3 times, yes, you don't need to purchase this book. You just need a library card. There's a sign right there that can help with that. And then my favorite, branch statistics. So this year we have signed up 1,398 people for new library cards. That is the 3rd most in the district. I would like to remind you all, we are like the 7th smallest library in the district, but we signed up the 3rd most people for new library cards. I don't think we're going to be able to get to 2nd. It's Cascade Park and VA kind of, they do a bit more than us. But you know, this is one of our big things. We hit a lot of people who don't get to other libraries. So they're walking around, oh, there's a library here. That's weird. I haven't been to a library in so long. They come in, they talk to us, get them a library card. It's a great opportunity to reach out to brand new users. We also had 67,000 visitors this year, which is almost double what we had last year. So we're still not back to where we were pre-COVID, but we're definitely moving in the right direction and starting to get back to those numbers. And we had 138,000 checkouts, which is more than last year, still not quite where we were pre-COVID. But we really destroyed our programming numbers from last year with 317 people. Just knocked those ones out of the park. We are hoping that I think we're almost past that number already right now. And so to end it off, I know tonight, this is the perfect night for me to be doing this. You're all going to be voting on extending our lease tonight. So I am just going to throw this out there. We are a very unique location. We have also been in the library, in the mall for 30 years, some different locations, stuff like that. But we are one of the longer libraries in a mall in the United States. People call me from other library districts literally across the US to talk to me about what's it take to have a library in the mall. It is very unique. It is a great way to be accessible to people because there are tons of people in the mall all the time. The mall numbers are continually going up, shockingly, despite the fact that everybody says that the malls are dying. Our mall is not. Last year we had more people in the Vancouver Mall than in 2019. So this is a great opportunity for us to be in a location where the people are and to be meeting them so we can meet their needs, and hitting the people who might be a little reserved about going into a location to go to a mall, but if they're already there, hey, we're here. We're there for you. So that's my big pitch for the mall. Please. Any questions? The biggest thing for me is making sure you have good communication with the mall management. I am very lucky. The current mall management is very friendly, and wants to encourage us and use us as mutually as possible. They use us in most of their so Centennial is the company that owns the mall, and they own, I want to say 6 or maybe 8 other malls, and we are the only one with a library in it. So we're on the front page of all their promotional materials and stuff like that. So that's the big thing, is getting a good relationship. In the past, we have had poor relationships with some of the previous owners, and that doesn't work out great. So the biggest thing I think is having a good relationship. That's for the manager side. On the other side, it's making sure that it's friendly and accessible. There's a lot of noise, both figuratively and literally, and making sure that you kind of stand out however you can and be like, yes, we're a library, but you're welcome here. You can come in, you can still hang out, you can do all the things you fully expect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. December financial statements with Amelia Shelley.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our ending December 2022 financials. Our cash balance at the start of 2022 was $19,672,242. We had a year-to-date revenue of $28,639,813 and a year-to-date expenditure of $27,407,443. There were some backdated expenditures that were incurred but not paid, and that's why you see that $28,789 added back in for a cash balance at December 31st of 2022 of $20,940,100. Interesting that it came out to be an even number. So of that 20,940, $12,040,426 are part of our reserve plan, leaving $8,899,674. And that basically is what carries us from the end of the year until our property tax collections begin in April. And generally we spend about $2.2 million a month. So that's about 4 months worth of cash on hand. So any questions about the cash balance? On the revenue side, we ended the year at, on our operational side, about 98% of revenue where we anticipated. You'll see property tax came in almost at 100%, 99.94%. So and that's pretty logical because we set the levy and those taxes are collected on that. The one outlier is always Klickitat County because they're a little bit behind on getting us those numbers when we set the levy. On other taxes, we came in quite high, and I've explained that to the Finance Committee. We had a change in, I believe, 2019, where the then Finance Director changed some of our forest. I think it's called State Forest Boards, switch that over to other general taxes and leasehold excise tax because those forest lands are considered leasehold excise. So that number is now split between those two places. Our new finance manager is beginning to record it a little bit differently, so we may switch back just so that's a little clearer and it helps you understand those numbers. Under our intergovernmental grants and contracts, we were at 93%. Again, the big number there was federal and lieu taxes, but just a little bit over the budget of 5,000 of 11,549. Charges for services came in ahead of budget. Again, we were trying to make a guess coming out of the pandemic as we began to be able to offer services again. So that number was a little higher than anticipated. And then investment interest came in stronger than we anticipated. Again, last year was kind of a hard year for us to guess how the bond market would do, and it did improve towards the end of the year. And then rental income came in way over budget, primarily because of the space that we purchased that was rented to CMAR when we bought it. The other outlier that I would note is we had anticipated receiving about $1 million in reimbursements in 2022 from the foundation. Of course, that was related to the Woodland project that has not yet begun. It'll happen and is budgeted for in 2023. And then the reserves, we did not expend the reserves we had anticipated to spend on Woodland as well. So you'll see that again in the 2023 budget. On the expense side of 2022, personnel costs came in at 94%. If you look back up to wages, you'll see that's at 98%. And that's primarily because of those end of the year agreements we got with the unions and brought us nearly to budget. But a lot of our benefits came in a little bit below budget. And so that accounts for that 94%. Supplies and small equipment came in at 96%. Technology is a little ahead of budget at 120%. As I approved some additional purchases towards the end of the year because I knew we had capacity in the budget for that and help them get ahead on this year's spending. And then library books and materials came in at right about 80%. And you'll see that print materials was about 55% and electronic resources, we were over budget at 115%. It's a little bit of the reflection of the higher cost of those e-books and e-audiobooks in our budget and putting some more capacity there. And because our circulation has still been down, as Brandon pointed out, not quite back to where we were before the pandemic. We're still struggling a little bit with shelf space in our libraries and having quite enough spaces for books to go. So we're still a little slow on purchasing materials and have reduced that slightly in the 2023 budget. Professional services came in at 106% of budget. And you can see a number of areas there that were slightly over budget, including professional services. That's things like our architects and custodial services. Communications, and that's our internet and the hotspots we have been circulating that are very popular with our patrons. Insurance, we had to add additional earthquake insurance this year that brought that in slightly over budget. And then repairs and maintenance up to 138%. Just some additional HVAC equipment that came in last year and was purchased. We had ordered new rooftop units for our Three Creeks Library that took about 18 months to be received. So some of those things we budgeted for a couple of years ago were just coming in this past year. Finally, you'll see under capital, that's where that non-spending happened in the reserve area. And you'll see that that area is at about 40% of budget. So overall, our budget for 2022 came in at 86.89 or about 87% of budget. Are there any questions on the expenditures?
Amelia, do you expect that the electronic collection is going to continue to outprice the printed? Is that a trend?
Well, it's more than even that. It's that the cost of an ebook is about $89. I'd say between $59 and $89. I'm looking at Jan because this is her area. And a print book might cost us closer to $30. So, we're already spending 2.5 times as much for an ebook. But then the other factor is they're licensed. So when we buy a print book, we own it forever. It's ours. Ebooks, it's 2 years or 24 circulations or whatever the particular license model is for that particular publisher. And they're all different. There's no two alike. And that's a big part of Jan's department's management is trying to figure out, keep up with what's disappearing because they just go away when we've used them up. And we have to know what to buy again and keep track of those hold lists and all of that. So it is a real challenge for us, and it continues to eat a bigger slice of our budget.
Good question. So with the nature of the ebooks, do we steward that? Like if a book hasn't been, checked out digitally often, do we just kind of let that go, or do we just have automatic renewal for purchase?
They absolutely curate this collection and keep track of what's circulating and what isn't. And that's really important. And it's hard because, of course, I'll give you the example of series books can be a real frustration for patrons where they're reading along in a series and number 4 has disappeared. Well, we hit the license on that one and maybe it wasn't super popular, so we didn't necessarily replace it. And that's a big part of Jan's job is kind of keeping track of all those little, outliers and making sure that we have something to provide to people. It might not always be an ebook. Hopefully it's a print, but if it goes out of print, that can be really challenging for us.
And is there like a different way to do this dance? Like, can we buy the ebooks or is it only licensing?
Only licensing. Yep.
Okay. Can you help me understand that? What?
It's the publishers are able to control the material much more. So books have historically had the right of first purchase. Am I saying that correctly? So when we buy a book under law, under the U.S. Constitution, I don't know what law it comes from, but it's U.S. law. When we buy a book, we own it and we have the right to resell that item. With ebooks, we have no rights to that after its license is expired.
And then last question, is there anything about just the limitation of how many times a book can be checked out digitally? Is there anything about those parameters that are communicated to the patron? Because I'll be honest, I'm one of those people that's just like click, 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 click. And I didn't know that there could be limitations and that something might be overused. And here I never even actually read it. You know what I mean? I don't do that anymore. I have in the past.
I'm following you, Olga. And that's an interesting thing. And it might be something we think about writing either in a newsletter or an article about, please be sure you're actually using the item that you put on hold because those do count as circulations. No one's tracking whether or not you actually read that book. Ever.
Yeah,
We don't know.
It's just the nature of digital stuff. I feel like it's just much more a sense of it's disposable. And I always assumed as a patron that because it's digital, it's more cost effective for the library and it's like a free for all. And I might as well take every single cookbook out about, chickpeas or something like that. Like, why not? So that might be something.
The publishers love you.
I know. Sorry, taxpayers.
Thank you, Amelia. Not hearing any other questions, so we can move on to the consent agenda. I would like to remove the minutes, though, for further discussion. Are there any objections to me pulling the minutes? Hearing none, so moved. Is Vic still online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Thank you. 1 second.
What? Is that where you omitted my name?
No. Did I miss something that you wanted me to do?
I find the page.
Okay. Vic, if you're ready, you can move ahead with the financials.
Do I need to review them or?
Vic, what we need is for you to tell the board that you have reviewed the financials for January and that they met your approval.
Yeah, I reviewed the financials for January and audited various, randomly various transactions, and they meet my expectations.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Anyone can do it.
Motion to approve.
A second.
Thank you. Since we have virtual attendees, we'll do a roll call vote.
Christine Morgan.
Aye.
Penny Love Hensley.
Aye.
Mary Ann Duncan Cole. Megan Dugan.
Aye.
Marie Coffey. Olga Hodges.
Aye.
And Bikram Katwani.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. I do want to go ahead and talk about the minutes while we're at this part of the meeting. So I think it's really helpful that we've included the topics with the public comments. I would not want to do this job taking minutes, so I'm really grateful for that happening. But if you look at the minutes on page 11 of our packet, I just think in order to record accurate representation for our minutes, we should be consistent with our wording. For instance, in the minutes, we see one viewpoint being described in a more positive light by you saying written comments in support of inclusive programming, and then all the folks that spoke out about that. And then the other viewpoint is described as written comments against Drag Queen Story Hour. And it's very negative light on that part. So it's they're just described differently. So I move that all references to inclusive programming in these minutes should be changed to in support of Drag Queen Story Hour. Is there any discussion on this?
Well, it seems like we have folks talking about more than just those two topics. Do we even have to have it segregated that way?
I can give some history on the public comment topics portion. When I first started, the public comment topics were removed and it just stated all the people who spoke at the meeting. But then when you're reading the minutes, you couldn't tell what they were saying. It just was like a list of names. So we had asked to reinstate putting down just a little blurb about what people were speaking about. And it kind of evolved into this. And I think we had someone taking minutes who didn't normally do it last time. But did somebody else have something to?
I just wanted to mention that the public comment form allows a space for the person speaking to include the topic, and the topics vary from speaker to speaker, and so one way that we could approach this is to simply take the wording from the public comment form as to what the person is describing that they're speaking about, as opposed to making an assumption or trying to ascertain the kernel of their comment into just a couple of words after the fact.
I think that's a great idea. What does everyone else think?
I kind of see both sides of it, where if we ever need a reference, for example, if there's people coming to advocate for like books about gray squirrels. Okay, it'd be nice to see, oh, there were 25 people that showed up on this day to talk about that. But would we have record of that detail anywhere else other than the recorded? Because it's just like a nice data point, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of wondering if we have an opportunity to capture that data point of 10 people talking about it this time, wow, 55 the next time. It's kind of a great observation for us as a board to have. And so my question is twofold. Like, is there another place where we have that data point available? And
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the public comments are only recorded in the minutes. And I think by looking at it, we can kind of see who commented on what. And I think it would be more accurate if your suggestion you took from what they wanted to talk about and put that on there.
I will also say many of the public comments put their topic as Drag Queen Story Hour without indicating their stance one way or the other. So that's something we would have to identify if we wanted to call it out one way or the other.
Would it be easy for you to just jot a note real quick on that in the moment so that you can put the minutes together? Or?
Yes, and that's how we've done it in the past, is if somebody puts Drag Queen Story Hour, then we would write whether they were pro or against.
Okay.
But we may not then, if somebody wrote something like library being safe for all, hard to know necessarily.
I mean, you could just put that and that's what we get. So, okay. Did that answer?
well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to like create more work for anybody, but it's just kind of like, how do we want to use these potentially in the future? If we want to use these for data, then we want it to be detailed. If not, then it's not really necessary to have so much detail, right? I don't know.
Yeah, and the goal was never to have a lot of detail, just kind of a general so-and-so spoke about this and that type thing, just quick. My main point here is not necessarily the level of detail, but just how it kind of feels like one side is in comments in support of inclusive programming, they're in a really positive light, and then it's like really negative written comments against Drag Queen Story Hour when they were pretty much speaking about a lot of the same things and a lot of different things. So for the purpose of this discussion in these minutes, I still move that inclusive programming be moved to in support of Drag Queen Story Hour.
I wouldn't vote for that because many of those people didn't talk about Drag Queen Story Hour. They talked about other topics.
So then would you be more comfortable if we remove the topics from this particular meeting altogether?
I think, I think that's fine.
Because I also heard many topics from both sides, so I'm not sure how to fix that in the moment right now. Is there any other discussion on that online or in here from the board?
Well, if they are going to indicate what their topic is or the pro or con, is it sufficient to just list their name with their own critique in 2 or 3 words of what they spoke about?
I don't really mind how we do it going forward, but we have to solve these minutes to approve them from last time. So I'm fine with that going forward, but in order to correct this, I'm not sure any of these are a correct description exactly of what people said. So trying to solve that and then also trying to solve going forward. Does that make sense?
I don't think we should leave it up for interpretation on our end.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I agree with that. So either you include the whole content, right, or don't include at all. It's not one or the other, or just a snippet of one liner does not represent what the talk was about. If it's somebody's talking for 3 minutes, and many of them, as we heard today, are neither in support or against that, but it's their viewpoint which was being presented on how things should be or how somebody feels from a religious perspective. So we should put the whole content if that is the motive behind it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Since we're recording, actually, I just thought of this. Do we need to still continue to include topics, do you think, if we're maintaining the public recording?
I'm not so, excuse me, I'm not so sure what you mean by something being offensive.
Not necessarily offensive. They're just speaking on the same types of things, but descriptions are completely different and not accurate.
Okay, because I mean, what I've seen is against, there are comments against the Drag Queen Story Hour.
But each one of those folks you think said the same thing is kind of where I'm hung up. It's like, and then inclusive programming, I heard much more than just inclusive programming. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they're just a.
So you want 4?
bias.
No, I want either to make
Pro
them the
con?
same. Actually, I think that's a bad idea now that we're discussing it. I think we should strike altogether the header from last meeting because they're not accurate. I mean, these 20 people didn't all say the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or we can just add a reference point, right? As we are recording these meetings, we can add as an addendum saying, okay, there were multiple people who were speaking in favor or against the Drag Queen Hour, right? And for reference, we see the extended recording. We don't have to include the whole content, but that will fill up many pages if we want to be, exact verbatim.
Yeah.
What if we just had it as comments on DQSH, in favor, opposed, and just simple as that? That way there's no bias and we're just documenting some data.
Again, from many of these meetings, of course, the main heading is, Drag Queen Hour, but the it has, gone in different direction of people supporting, an idea or, or, proposing all inclusive content for everybody. It's no longer just drag queen hour. It's, it has become more generalized. And if we see the, overall what everybody has been talking about, it's, whether you should have books of certain, topics in the library, whether, how the internet is being restricted or not, if there's, pornography being allowed on the free internet in the library. So all topics are, available for talk. So it's, as I see it, it's not just one topic as such.
Yeah, I actually agree with that because it seems, kind of one of the things we talk about is I wish people would see that there's more to us than just drag queen story hour or not. And so hopefully going forward, we will encourage more comments of varied topics. So that's a good point. I kind of like the idea of having a reference point during the meeting recording where people can go back and watch the minutes, but I don't know enough about recording public record. Is that fine? Does anyone know that answer? Since we're still kind of learning
looking
this
at you, Tack.
electronic
Yeah,
records, I'm sorry, I don't know.
I mean, anything's possible. It might require, one of the discussions that we had previously was whether or not we would provide a closed captioning or a transcript of the recording. Having a transcript would definitely allow for a lot easier to search that, because then we're already doing the work of saying, at minute 600 or whatever it is, that something's happening. Fortunately, none of our meetings go 600 minutes, but at minute 48.
Good joke, good joke.
So, it's certainly possible, but it would require a little bit of work that we would already be doing as part of doing a transcript.
I think we can start with what we have at this point. If it's an automated captioning, if the Zoom meetings provide that option, we can capture that. And as we go along, if more options are available, we can always include them. And references, if these minutes are published online, references would be easier to add in them. Like for now, if the whole meeting is available, then we just include that, just a link to that. And in the future, if it becomes more easier to add precise minutes and every second when somebody spoke or what reference or what was their point, we can add those.
Just so I'm clear, are you saying that we would just have public comments start at 15 minutes in and that would be enough, right? If we don't need to go so far as to say, Christy Morgan spoke at 16 minutes and 30 seconds. Is that kind of what you're saying? We don't need to go to that level of detail. We can just have public comments start here.
Correct. Like what I am saying is we can start with what we have.
Mhm.
If that, being that specific is not possible, or, the staff doesn't have that options to do that right now, we can start with what is there. And in the future, if, it becomes technologically easier to add that without adding any, further staffing burden on the library, we can include that.
Okay.
So we are not hiring a special, transcriber for these meetings.
Yeah. Any other discussion on that point?
Not-
For these
not from my side.
for these minutes, then can we strike the written comments in support of inclusive programming in the library and written comments against drag queen story, DQSH programs in the library, and just include public comments this time? You could either do written or in person. I guess we could leave that. So leave the written comments and then in-person comments, and then strike the rest for this particular set of minutes. Any discussion on that? Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve minutes as amended. Or give me feedback otherwise.
Are we leaving it just the way it is, or are you?
No, I move that we leave written comments and in-person comments, but strike all descriptive wording after that before the names.
You want me- Motion to approve?
As amended.
Motion to approve as amended.
Is there a second?
I second.
Roll call vote, please.
Christine Morgan. Aye. Penny Love Hensley.
Aye.
Megan Dugan.
Aye.
Marie Coffey.
Aye.
Olga Hodges.
Aye.
And Vikram Katwani.
Aye.
Consent agenda as amended passes. We are ready to move on to the business portion of our meeting. We'll start with the collection review procedure with Jan Johnston.
Hello, board. I'm Lynn Caldwell Minnick. Oh, sorry, that's my old name. Dang it. I said this is being recorded. I'm not going to say anything dumb. I'm Lynn Caldwell, the Collection and Technology Services Director, and this is Jan Johnston. She's the collection manager for FVRL. And we're here tonight to talk to you about the collection review process and what it is and answer any questions you might have about it. So what is a collection review? So that's the opportunity we give our cardholders and residents of our service area, the opportunity to question things we may have in the library. It might be whether we have it at all, or whether it's maybe in a spot they think it shouldn't be. And they do this by filling out a form. Sorry, I'm trying to see my slides here. I had help with my slides, so I gotta catch up. So the forms are available on our website as well as in person. And the process usually starts when a patron comes up to a staff person and says, I see this book here and I think it should be an adult, not juvenile, or why do you have this? I don't like it. And our staff talk to them about why we might have it. But if the person still wants to go through a formal process with us, then we give them the form, they fill it out. And then it goes to Jan and to our executive director, Amelia. In this case, it's Amelia, but whoever the executive director is. And they would then tell the patron that, yes, we received this form. And Jan then would call together the committee. This is a typical thing done in most public libraries. I can't say all, but most public libraries do this. It's very common. And we follow this procedure for all of them. We take it very seriously. We review all of the forms that come through. Let's go ahead to the next slide, I think. So yes, so these are the steps I was just mentioning. We ask the patrons, what do you object to in the material, so that we know what it is that they're objecting to. Then we also ask them what action you would like to see, whether it's, I don't want you to have this at all. I think this should be teen instead of J, or adult instead of teen, or whatever it is that they want to see happen. And then we ask, do you usually find what you want in the library? And if not, do you have suggestions for us about other things that might meet your needs better? Because maybe they don't want this book, and maybe this book isn't good for their family or for them, but how can we meet your need? Tell us things that you might want to have in the library that we don't, and we'll look into it. So then, as I was saying, Amelia then would send a letter acknowledging the form, and then Jan calls together the committee, and I'll get into the makeup of the committee in just a moment. She calls together the committee and gets copies of the book. So sometimes there's only a couple copies of the book, and then people have to share copies and pass it amongst the committee. So sometimes it takes a little longer than other times, just because they have to share. Jan can jump in anytime.
We often have to share the copies, so it's just a matter of getting them in. And sometimes they're on hold already, so then we have to wait for the hold to be filled to have the items come in.
Thanks, Jan. It wasn't really a hint, but you know. All right, so the committee makeup. The committee is made up of Jan, the collection manager, the selector for the book in question. So we have selectors that we have 4, right? And they have subject areas that's their specialty. We have one that selects all the youth materials, one that does the ebooks and e-audio, electronic resources, and then nonfiction. So if it was, say, a nonfiction book, then Holly, our nonfiction selector, would be the person who would join the committee for that review. And then we have a staff person from the branch where the form originated. So if it originated at the Cascade Park branch, then one of the librarians or staff members from Cascade Park, it's usually the manager, supervisor, or a librarian, but it could be a senior library assistant, but somebody that represents, excuse me, that branch. And then we have 3 standing members who are just various people from throughout the library district that have agreed to serve for this period of time to help review and discuss the items that come up. All right, next slide. So the committee then would conduct the review, and they do things like read reviews, so that they see how this book has been received in the world. They look at the publisher's content. So what did the publisher intend when they were putting this out? We compare how many other libraries have it, where do they have it placed, what's the call number in various libraries around. And Jan was telling me she's even called an author one time. You want to tell them that?
Yeah, it's actually happened a couple of times where the committee read the item and it felt like it could go maybe in 2 different places. And we were really interested in what the author's intended audience was. So we reached out and actually got a response. So that doesn't happen very often, but it helped in that case.
So then after reviewing all of these things, reviewing the material in question, looking at what the patron wrote, then the committee makes a recommendation to the executive director. The executive director considers the recommendation and then makes a final decision. And then that decision is communicated to the patron. If there's some cataloging change, like the item's going to be moved to young adult or to adult, we let the technical services staff know, and they place holds on all the items, bring them in and recatalog them and relabel them with a new spine label. And then we report this to the ALA Office of Intellectual Freedom for data collection purposes. All right, the most common reasons why we receive these reviews: age appropriateness, sexual content, nudity, sexual orientation, violence, strong language, and witchcraft, occult / religion, especially in the 80s. There were a lot of those. Next slide. So I went back and looked at how many we got each year for the records that we have. And you can see that the big one is 1993. We had a lot of, I wasn't here then, but I hear that we had a lot of these requests to remove Joy of Sex and Joy of Gay Sex. We had both of those back in the 90s. And you can see that in the 80s, 70s, we had a lot more than we have these days. I don't know that this is a fact, but to me, it seems like once the internet became super a thing, the requests dropped a lot. And I don't know if that's because I can't say why, but it seems like it may be maybe a coincidence. I'm not sure. And we just have, we get a few a year, a small handful a year. The categories here, you can see mostly it's young adult and juvenile that we receive these for, occasionally adult. Occasionally we had a DVD once, last year, I think. And a CD. We don't carry music CDs, so we don't really get many as far as CDs go. Could have been an audio CD.
Yeah, I think it was definitely an audio CD.
Okay, and then we have challenges by format. We've got fiction, nonfiction, graphic novel. Mostly it's fiction, a little bit of nonfiction. One of them was unsafe horsemanship. The patron thought there was unsafe horsemanship in this nonfiction book. So, we discussed it and reviewed it, and yeah. Next. So challenges by complaint. So you can see that obscene and inappropriate are the two categories most often listed as reasons why someone objects to a material. A little bit of LGBTQ, a little bit of racism, and a little bit of quality. I think one of the review forms listed this was based on a flawed study. So, something like that as far as quality goes. Any others? Any more slides? That's it. All right. So that's just the big picture overview, but we're happy to answer questions.
Are those numbers, I have no idea, you say a small handful a year. So is that like 14, like that literally is 15 complaints in that amount of years?
So like in 1993, there were 131 about joy of sex and 41 for joy of gay sex.
If you go back to the other slide though.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Oh, sorry, that one. So there were like 2 complaints total from 2013 to 2022 regarding racist content. Is that literally a 2 or is
I
like
believe so.
20 or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And quality, there's like 2. Those are real numbers. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see in the last 10 years, there's been 4 or 5 a year. Oh, 1 in 2020. So maybe 1 in 2020 and 6 some other year, but yeah, a few a year.
Have you ever removed a book because of the patron's form? And does the patron expect that that's the outcome? Is that what they're?
I can't tell you what they genuinely expect. I don't know, in their head if they really think we will remove it or if they're just expressing their opinion, which they have a right to do. To my knowledge, we have not removed a book, but it is fairly, I don't know if common's the right word, but we certainly move things from juvenile to teen or teen to adult on occasion.
So we have autonomy to organize our collection however we want, right? It doesn't matter what the publisher says or what other libraries do. We can organize it how we want for our district, correct?
Because of the volume of materials we deal with, we generally use the call numbers assigned to it that everyone uses. We kind of all use the same records from OCLC, and we try to be correct, if it says that, usually even on picture books, I think sometimes it'll say intended for 8 to 12-year-olds or intended for, sometimes they'll say ages, not always, but
we can use our own judgment. We don't have to go by what they say. Is that correct?
Sorry, I promised Lynn I wouldn't jump in.
It's okay.
So just maybe it would be helpful to know that when we purchase books, they come with a record created by a cataloger, and that has a call number associated with it. So another professional in the field has made it, a call on that book. And in general, what Lynn is saying, we follow what the record says, because to ask us to look at each individual item each time we get a record and judge on our own personal level whether or not we think it's correct would not just be onerous, but would be very much up to that individual looking at that. So we rely on those records being accurate.
But can we move something if we feel that it's wrong?
Well, that's why we have this review process.
So the answer is yes. We can.
We have, yes.
Thank you.
I have a question. So I was able to see the records for last year for the reviews that were submitted. And one of the trend I'm noticing, which really you highlighted here too, is things around obscenity, young adult, juvenile. And so one of the things I'm wondering is when we put something into the collection that, so young adult, remind me the age for that, it's 14 to 17?
No, young adult. So the teen collection is generally 12 to 18.
Okay. Okay.
You know, and some kids that are 8 read above their level, it's not up to us.
They have access to everything for
Yeah,
sure.
right. But
So one of the nuances I'm noticing is like, so we catalog it in the correct place. So like, a graphic book that a parent might complain about. Technically, we've put it in the correct area because it's young adult. The publisher says it's 16 and up, but we say a 12 and 13-year-old can go check that out. I'm kind of wondering, what does that mean when like a publisher sets an age, but we put it in a place where there's access? That's, we're leading people to think this is fine. This is access that's appropriate for 12 to 18-year-olds, but actually this specific book is 16 and up.
yeah, and it's sort of been recent-ish trend in the young adult, particularly the graphic novels, to call something older teen. And we're just starting to notice that more and more. And so with the older teen, we've decided to have our selector who purchases those review them and make the decision when they come in.
Older teen.
It's an older teen designation. And it's just becoming more and more prevalent. We hadn't really noticed it that much before, but it's more and more of them are aimed for 16 plus or 17 plus. And so the person who receives them out of the box, if they notice that older teen on them, they're putting them on the selector's desk, and then the selector is reviewing them to see where they want to place it, if they want to place it in YA or an adult.
So older teen is over, like young adult would include younger kids than older teen.
So it's up to the publisher, that phrase older teen, it's up to the publisher, whether it's a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17. I mean, it's all over the board by publisher. So it's not a designation we make.
I'm just trying to understand what the hierarchy there is, because I haven't seen older teen before.
Yeah, we're starting to see that more and more on the graphic novels, particularly.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it on fiction. Have you?
No, just mostly graphic novels.
Can I jump in with a question of the YA designation? Reading level, age, or more mature content, or all three?
So for young adult, it's primarily those in that age, teenager age would find it of interest and be at their reading level. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think you've covered it.
Amelia would like to jump in.
I do have an opinion. I was a youth librarian for 10 years, and generally the protagonist in the story is of that age group. So, you're assuming that the books will be more appealing to someone of the same age that would be reading that item. So that's generally how we would look at it, not necessarily content. I mean, there's some things about like juvenile books, except for like Bridge to Terabithia, in general, don't have death in them. I mean, it's just like one of the rules, you don't have death in books for kids under 12. Not necessarily true of all books, but that's kind of a publisher standard. Death tends to go to older kids, so it might be a younger protagonist, but because of the circumstance of the story, it might go to YA.
Well, thank you for that clarification. I think some of the public thinks that it's content level, that this is more mature issues. Yes and no?
I think it's more nuanced than that, but I think in general, they're trying to write books that will appeal to a specific audience. So if a book was about a 6-year-old, but it had mature content, I wouldn't be in the YA area either. It would probably be in the adult area. You know what I'm trying to say? So I wouldn't look at content so much as that age piece being, but the assumption is as kids age, they're going to be ready for different content.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so, the elephant in the room with all this is concern about sexual content for juveniles and young, young adults and I guess older teens. My thoughts on this is we're seeing a lot of change in just the content that's being produced and published, and I'm happy to hear that there's a rating that's something like older teen to give people more of an informed choice when they're seeking these materials out. That's great. I'm all about people just having access to things. But again, between 12 and 18 is such a range of maturity, and a lot of these things are being lumped in, especially with the manga and the graphic novels that seem to be the ones that seem to be the most challenged. So I'm curious if you can share any ideas, maybe some problem solving, some sort of opinionated solution. It doesn't have to be something that we for sure do, where we can inform people a little bit more about the content, the things that, I'm concerned about, like, again, looking at the things that were submitted last year. Parents are upset because a book for a 16-year-old was picked up by a 12-year-old. And I read something about torture, that's, nude torture and sexual abuse and things like that. So topics that are a little more, usually have like a little bit of a warning, and ours seem to all be lumped in together. Sorry, I'm forming my thoughts as I speak. I wonder if there's any creative solutions where we can kind of express those things a little more so people have a little bit of a warning, or make more of an informed choice. What do you think?
I mean, we really depend on parents of minors to monitor what their children are doing. It's really what we depend on, because the library is for everyone. And different parents have different philosophies about what they want their children to read. I know the gentleman who made a comment earlier said he brings his grandchildren and he reviews what they are going to check out before they check them out. And I think that's great. That's what I think should happen. So I think we really depend on parents to make the choices for their own children, but that we as the library need to have things for everyone, and each parent can make their own choice about that.
I'm referring mostly to the young adult, like most 12 to 18-year-olds aren't looking for books. Like, that's not really the culture. I've noticed, like, they're not really coming in with their parents to check those books out. Though I, think that would be great. I understand that the burden falls on the parents and the person that's looking to pick the materials out. And this isn't a thing political or anything, anything like that. I'm just curious if would it be helpful to have signs like, explicit content in this area potentially? Like, it seems to be that patrons are also hoping that we have our good judgment providing materials that won't necessarily be explicit and obscene, not things that they disagree with, not racist or the quality, but the obscenity and the inappropriateness. Particularly what I'm noticing is with the graphic novels, with the imagery, that seems to be the kind of the main rub here. And I'm just curious if there's any way that we can find out or understand that there's ways that we can classify things that would help inform people a little bit more. Or do you want to just, no?
Do we have any like labels for, like, when you're talking about YA where it would say older teen?
So we don't make that judgment. That I'm saying that we're seeing that the publisher on the book, it's being published on the book to say that. We're not making that judgment. We're just noticing that publishers are printing the books that way. So we don't read them and say, oh, this is for 17-year-olds, or, we don't make that judgment ourselves.
Is that part of the cataloging that is for an older teen?
No, this is just the publishers doing this. And we're particularly seeing this on graphic novels, not on just fiction, young adult fiction.
Thank you.
So an add-on question to that is, so whatever the publisher is publishing, is it just a small line on their ISBN code that librarians can read? Or is that something like, if I go and pick a book, will it show me what kind of content the book has, or only I will know after reading the book?
Do you mean beyond, when you flip it over to the back or the inside cover, you can read a synopsis? Is that what you mean?
No, like for example, right, comparing it to the, say movies. If I, pick a James Bond movie, it will say TV mature audience, right? Or, similar rating for TVs, it will say, 18 plus. So does the books have some kind of indicator on that, like the cover itself, which will indicate that, okay, this is meant for older teens or this is meant for kids? Like graphic novels, do they indicate anywhere on the cover or back of the cover or in the catalog which says it's meant for older teens?
So we don't have an official rating system for books, but some of the publishers, particularly of graphic novels, like I said, will list the age of intended audience, and even some of various kids' books or fiction, it will list an intended age, best for 8 to 12-year-olds, things like that. But that's up to the publisher. It's not a rating system that the library is instituting.
Well, if I can
Right.
add,
Right. So that's what I'm asking. If you got a book from the publisher, which like that it's meant for older teens. So is that indicated somewhere on the front of the book itself from the publisher or from the library that it's meant for older teens? Because I haven't seen any rating of a book, on front of a book saying this is an adult novel or it's a, kid's book.
It's really up to the publisher. Some of them put it on there and some don't. Sometimes it's up in the upper corner of the book on the back, it'll say it. Sometimes it's near the ISBN number, which is the book code number, with the barcode on the back. But it's really up to the publisher. It's not consistent.
So if we are aware of such systems, which is available from the publisher, is it possible to, put that on the, spine of the book itself, what that publisher rating is? I'm not telling you guys to invent a new rating, but whatever you get from the publisher, is it possible to put that same rating on the book itself?
I just want to interrupt or just make a comment that yes, it is possible. That would also require us to touch every book that comes into our library in an additional way than we already do in order to catalog it and to make that information available. It is also inconsistent from publisher to publisher, from series and title to title. I would say the vast majority of books in our collection do not have this information available to us. I also want to emphasize that a publisher's determination of what this intended age is not a black and white rule of indicating who this book is appropriate for, either due to reading level or content. We all know children who read far above their reading level. We all know children who are capable of reading more mature content than maybe their peers might be. And that is, if we are to put these labels on our materials, it would be an indication that we as a library system believe that this book is appropriate or indicated for a certain age level, which is something that goes against our values and our principles and our values of intellectual freedom and access for all. So I just want to emphasize that it is possible. Yes, we could do that, but I hope we're sharing with you some of the reasons why we do not do that and why it would be inefficient and possibly even restrictive to do so.
I would like to jump in here with a comment. This has actually come up at the policy committee meetings, and I find it frustrating that we're hearing from the public, people want to find the books they want. They want to avoid the books they don't want. We're telling them, parents, you have to do the work and choose the books for your children, but we're not giving them good tools to do so. Every time a suggestion is brought up, we just hear why we can't do these things instead of coming together for creative solutions of what we can do. So does anyone have any solutions that will work instead of why everything won't work?
I would love to suggest that patrons who are concerned about the content of the materials that the library provides, that their kids have access to, speak with our incredibly trained staff who are immersed in this world and can help parents identify the materials that are right for their children, whether that's based on content, reading level, or even, you know, just the things that we do every day. Why did you like this book? What about this book made you excited to read it? What's going, you know, let's find you a book that's going to make you excited to read. That is something that we have trained professionals on staff to do, and that is a resource that's available to everyone. And we also have opportunities for patrons to submit a list online of what they're looking for and what parameters and limitations they may have. We are happy to put together a bundle of books for them that meet those parameters. We also have tools like Novelist, which is an e-resource that allows folks to identify items that they find that, you know, if their kid liked a certain book, they can find read-alikes that also can give them insight into some of the content to help them identify those books that would be the most appropriate for their children. So we do have lots of tools. We could possibly do a better job of emphasizing how to use these tools and training our patrons about how to use these tools. But I do think we have creative solutions to helping people find the books that are best for their families.
Thank you for your comment. But I don't think parents want to come in and go ask for someone to guide them around the library. I think that people want to be independent and have the tools to do what we're asking them to do. And asking a librarian every time, I don't think is a good solution. I don't have the answers yet because I brought a few suggestions forward and they just hit brick walls. And so I am asking again that we all consider this, because what we're doing right now is not working. We have mad people on both sides. People are just completely segregated in the room tonight. How can we bring people back together and try and satisfy needs on all sides? I don't expect an answer tonight, but it's something I definitely think we should be thinking about.
Chair Morgan, may I
Yes.
just say something? I guess my concern is that, you know, we received 8 complaints last year and we serve a very large service area. So, you know, what we're hearing about from the public is primarily about a program that we did 4 years ago. We're not hearing a lot of people coming to these meetings asking us to label books or put them in special areas. I guess I worry that we're not looking at the collection holistically. We're not looking at all the things we're doing right. We're simply focusing on the few things it would appear we are doing poorly or wrong in some people's opinions. So I guess I'm not afraid to have this conversation, but I do worry that it's being blown out of proportion for what the level of complaint actually is.
I can see why you would say that, but I do have a letter that was written really well in our board comment packet from Slavic Boat. I think that you don't realize how many people have quit complaining because they feel like they're not being heard. If you read their comment, it says they have a membership of 50 to 1,000 members per church. This letter is from them. It's in our board packets. It talks about they've been disappointed in leadership and direction when it comes to book selections, et cetera. Won't read the whole thing. But over the last 3 years, they have transitioned their focus from impacting libraries to opening their own app churches, to launching private schools, homeschool centers, parent co-ops to avoid public libraries and schools. So what this tells me is there are a huge percentage of people who don't even speak up anymore. And I think it's a very minor thing to try to find some sort of electronic solution where you can scan a book and see a bunch of tags, something that doesn't cost a lot of money. I mean, doing nothing doesn't seem like the right answer.
And I would like to add to that comment saying, right, we put the books as fiction, non-fiction, right, based on what the publisher has provided. Adding another tag about the age appropriateness, what the publisher has provided, shouldn't be that much of a concern, right? I'm not telling that library invent their own system of classifying books, right, or adding additional information. I'm just asking to consider that whatever you have got from the publisher, you just add that if available, That too, if available. If the publisher doesn't give you anything, then it will be up to the librarian how they want to classify that. But if a publisher has provided that, we can add that additional tag in the catalog.
Vikram, just to answer your question, 99% of the time, the publisher has provided us with a call number as part of the record on the book. It's in a very few instances where this might be printed on the exterior, probably pretty limited to graphic novels, I'm thinking. I rarely see any kind of age information printed on the outside of books. It's mostly coming to us through the cataloging record. But we do follow what the record gives us.
Our catalog records also have summaries available often through our ILS, not necessarily through the actual catalog record with the call number subject headings, but we also have available some summaries in the record when you look at our catalog. Sorry, I use jargon. ILS is our library cataloging system. But when you look at our catalog from a patron's perspective, you can often see a summary that might say something about age in there as well.
I think this topic we should definitely discuss more further, if any better solutions are available. If not, leave it at that point.
If I could add, as a former employee, I think we do an exceptionally good job of putting a lot of the information out there. If anything seems to be lacking here, I think it's maybe an opportunity to educate the parent more of what tools that we have, how to read the summaries, how to evaluate. Because we're asking them to do that job, let's help them. For those that are interested, not all are interested and not all have the time, but perhaps we can take that up a step to where we have a discussion group for parents on how to evaluate books or more be proactive to help them make these decisions.
That's really what it's about for me as a parent. It's unfortunate that we constantly get gaslit to say that we're trying to ban books or trying to oppress somebody. We are just asking for a more accessible system so that parents can navigate things without having to bother staff. They can certainly pursue staff if they want, without, like I constantly have to Google the age range for these things or suggested age, because things in the publishing industry, they're changing, and content that's offered to youth is changing. We're in a much more digital age, faster consumption, all this kind of stuff. That's fine. I really just want to see us catch up, because here, look, they're creating an older teen rating. Fantastic. Somebody's finally responding to the fact that content for a 12-year-old is kind of different than content for a 17-year-old. That's not to limit access. That's not to say, wow, super smart 12-year-old, you can read that book for an 18-year-old. No, we want to encourage that. That's fine. But what I consistently saw, yes, in the small handful of reviews that were submitted, was parents being upset and concerned that there's things like cannibalism, that, graphically illustrated, sexual abuse. I have seen images of pedophilia, things like that, where realistically, let's be honest, not every parent's going to come in and flip through a book for their 14 or 15-year-old. And it's unfair for us to just be like that constantly. All I'm saying is, can we please create some tools of transparency? Even something like, these are the publishers, these are the books that are suggested for 12 to 14-year-olds, 16 to 18, just some sort of thing where parents can make more of an informed choice, and so can young people. How is that disabling anything? How is that discouraging anything? I'm not asking for anything other than when there is graphic, obscene, sexual imagery. Can we start there? I'm reading things like, oh, in this book that was, in the juvenile section, it should probably be in the young adult section because there's a giant engorged penis in it. Like, and then the response we get here is, well, parents can decide what's appropriate for their kids. I get that. But when do we create more tools so people can actually do that? Okay. That's what I'm really after here.
Chair, I would request that, this be added to the policy meetings going forward to discuss so that, over coming months, we can have some guidance around that.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we will talk about it again in policy committee. Thank you. Okay, moving on to Woodland Project update with Amelia Shelley. Did I miss something? I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry, Chair.
Yeah, that's okay.
We are going to discuss the additional rules of conduct.
Oh, I thought that was at the end. I'm sorry. Go
And
ahead.
what I am hoping to do this evening is ask you to rescind our additional rules of conduct because the emergency rules that put it in place have been canceled. So unfortunately, because this is late to the meeting, it's not in your packet, but I'm just going to quickly read to you. The purpose of this policy was to be a supplement to our rules of conduct during the COVID-19 pandemic under the Governor's Proclamation 2005 and its subsequent amendments. And then on the policy itself, the directives, mandates, orders, and guidance for responding to COVID-19 will evolve as we move through this public health emergency. FVRL has expanded its list of expected behavior to comply with directives, mandates, orders, and other guidance from federal, state, or local public health authorities. FVRL's rules of conduct will be updated regularly to reflect current public health guidance. So this policy was put into place in the summer of 2021, and it was specific to behavioral rules around facial coverings, meeting room access, distance between patrons, limited time in the libraries, different things that were going on in terms of the government advice we were receiving at that time for managing our indoor spaces. Right now, the governor of Washington has rescinded all emergency proclamations, and the federal government is poised to end all emergency proclamations on, I believe, May 5th of this year. So I'm asking the board to consider rescinding these additional rules of conduct because they're so specific to COVID-19 that I think this time has ended and we no longer need them.
Is there any discussion on that? Since it's in addition, do we do action on that tonight or do we have to wait?
Because we're rescinding it, you do not have to have multiple readings. It's already a written policy. I would ask that it just needs to be a vote. It doesn't have to be a resolution.
Do I just ask for, sorry, I'm not sure what to do since it's an add-on.
I would ask for a motion to rescind the additional rules of conduct.
Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion to rescind the additional rules of conduct.
I would make a motion to do away with them, yes.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Christy Morgan.
Aye.
Penny Love Hensley.
Aye.
Megan Dugan.
Aye.
Marie Coffey.
Aye.
Olga Hodges.
Aye.
And Vikram Katwani.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now moving on to Woodland Project update with Amelia.
Thank you. I'm just going to be very quick. We are at 100% design development on Woodland and are currently in pricing. And what that means is the building is basically fully designed. And once we get the pricing back, we have one last opportunity to make any changes, which might save us money on the project based on that pricing. And we call that value engineering or VE when we look to reduce the cost by making that change maybe to a particular system or a building material. We've already done quite a bit of work in this area, so I'm very hopeful that we will be getting back some hopefully better numbers than we have in the past. We've done a number of things to sort of change some elements without really changing the look of the building to help us save some money. We have scheduled the groundbreaking for this project for June 17th. Looking at Rick, yes, Judy, of this year, and that coincides with Planters Day in Woodland. And so, of course, I'd like you to mark your calendars because it'd be great to have you with us.
So, Amelia, a quick question regarding that. So, are all the funds coming through grants, or we will be contributing some from the reserves too?
FVRL has already set aside some reserves for Woodland, and you'll see them if you look at the financials at the very front of your packet. On that statement of cash, you'll
Right.
see that for Woodland, we have a little over $2.4 million currently set aside, and then the foundation has raised an additional $3 million in grants. The Friends have some money, so we still have some funds to raise, but we're hoping we're much closer to that goal than we were in the past. And we feel very confident that we can keep moving forward with this project.
Great. And are there any additional grants that can be applied for this particular project?
Perhaps that might be a question for the foundation. But at this time, I'm not aware of what else they may have applied for or what might be pending at this time.
So is that something you can follow up on with the foundation, if you can, please?
Absolutely.
And get an update if they have applied, and if you are aware that there are some grants available, whether the library directly applies them, considering the time constraints and responses right from the foundation, that would be much appreciated.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yep, it's me again, sorry. One of those nights. So I am moving on to the Vancouver Mall lease renewal. You have in your packet a staff report that describes the change in our rate starting January 1st of 2024, and then going up at 4% a year for 5 years. We've talked quite a bit about the value of this branch, and I thank Brandon for being here this evening to share that with you. And, the idea that we have 5 years and it gives us time to, think about alternatives. We have planned this year to have a strategic facility study done. This will be the first time in 10 years. And so I think this is a good opportunity for us to really look at this location and consider what our other options might be. And I think it's just as important to understand the cost of a new facility versus the cost of a lease, and how long the return on that investment would be over time. So I'm asking this evening for you to go ahead and approve this lease.
And in the future references like these lease renewals, if we can include a small section, what you talked about, the return on investment, which would show either the leasing is much cheaper or, having a, separate dedicated facility, which is owned, would be much better, would be really a good data point.
You bet, I can do that. Because we've been there for 30 years, it's really hard to even describe how much we've invested in this particular location over time versus new construction or even leasing another space and remodeling it. I know that this remodel of the mall, the last remodel that was done, I think in 10 years ago, was about $1 million, something like that.
Yeah.
So this is for 5 years, and in that time, our plan is to kind of weigh options and see if we can do something better for the future. So this is on page 40 of our packet. I would entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-7.
I'll make a motion to pass that resolution 2023-07 for the Vancouver Regional Library District Board of Trustees to approve the lease amendment for the Vancouver Mall Library, extending the existing lease from March 1, 2023 to March 31st, 2028.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
We'll move to a roll call vote, please.
Christy Morgan.
Aye.
Penny Love Hensley.
Aye.
Megan Dugan.
Aye.
Marie Coffey.
Aye.
Olga Hodges.
Aye.
And Bikram Katwani.
Aye.
The motion passes. We'll move on to the Vancouver Library Carpet Project with Amelia.
Thank you. So if you recall back in, I think, October, you approved the contract for Rubenstein Flooring to do the carpeting at this library. And that project is complete. And one of the things we are required by law to do is apply for a closeout with the state on any project over $150,000. And then any contracts that required board approval over $300,000 also require the board to approve the closeout. And the closeout is simply us submitting all of the paperwork to the state, and then various agencies will sign off on it. And this is before we can provide retainage to that vendor. So in the interest of helping us expedite that process when everything gets approved, which often takes 3 to 4 months, this will help us get that retainage paid out. So I'm asking for you to pass this resolution this evening.
Any discussion? I would entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-8.
I move that we approve resolution 2023-8 and that the Board of Trustees of the Fort Vancouver Regional Library District authorize the executive director to file a notice of completion for the Vancouver Community Library Flooring Project and close out the Rubenstein Flooring contract once all approvals have been returned by the state.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Christy Morgan.
Aye.
Penny Love Hensley.
Aye.
Megan Dugan.
Aye.
Marie Coffey.
Aye.
Olga Hodges.
Aye.
And Bikram Katwani.
Aye.
Resolution 2023-8 passes. We will move on to the Foundation MOU Committee Information section.
Right now, we're working on getting a date where the two boards, where the two members can meet of the committee. I think it's 3 members for both committees, and we're waiting for a date.
So there has not been a meeting yet, correct?
That is correct.
And no date is set still?
No, we're waiting to hear back.
Okay.
Oh.
So
Okay.
there, okay.
Okay, I haven't seen that yet. Thank you.
So the discussion, do I have to say what we're talking about for the recording? The discussion is regarding the committee's meeting to talk about the MOU. And there currently is not a date set yet for the first meeting, correct? I'm sorry, I think it's hard to hear you up here.
Debbie, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the dates we were discussing were for the boards to have a mixer. And this is specific to the 2 committees meeting.
I got an email and it was for March 16th or and like noon to 1 or a little bit later or 2 days later, something like that. It was right around there, but that was like a month after what we had originally wanted the first meeting.
Right, that email was from me, correct?
Okay, so it was from you. So I responded to that
I
right
haven't-
away.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a response.
Yeah, I responded to that. I checked with my other members and it was within 2 hours.
Okay.
So,
March 16th?
yes. And it was earlier, like noon to 1, I think.
Okay, I'll check my email to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming up here. So then, is there any discussion about that today, or well, I'll just leave it at that question.
Okay, we haven't had the meeting yet. yeah.
Okay. It looks like then that meeting will occur before the next regular meeting, so maybe just the next update would be at that. Okay. We can move on to board comments. Does anyone have any comments they want to make today?
I thank Vancouver for hosting us again. I appreciate making the facilities available because I know it is a lot of work. So I thank you for that, and I thank you for the members of the community that came out to speak today. That's it.
Okay, anyone else?
Yes, okay. I just want to express the letter that was brought up from Slavic Boat. This is a community that I'm not affiliated with this group officially, but as a Slavic person, I am a member culturally, socially that way. And I just want to be clear that this group, and I believe this email is available to everybody, represents tens of thousands of Slavic people in Washington. They also span representation in Idaho and Oregon and down into California. And the letter that we received clearly states that some of the things that we were talking about tonight, and I know I was kind of impassioned talking about it, that these are some of the deal breakers for that community, tens of thousands. And I understand we don't have tens of thousands of emails from them. We have an email from their team speaking on behalf. And this is something that is important and is something that we need to acknowledge. And to be honest, the collection review form is a little bit of a dead end. In the last 5 years, it's my understanding that we've never actually moved on any of the concerns that the patrons have had, other than in one case, which was my case personally, where I was able to identify that a book was mislabeled by the publisher and action was taken. So I just want to make that clear. And it's my understanding that the community of Slavic Boat has come out in their letter. That was before my time. They've come out quite a few times. And there was, I guess, one big group that came out especially. And this matters. And it is my impression that we are turning off a lot of people. And this isn't just a one cherry-picked, nitpicky issue. And so I appreciate getting that letter. I appreciate you bringing it up. It sounds like we'll be hearing more from them. And again, as a member of the Ukrainian community, I'm happy to be here to represent my community. And I am disappointed that our concerns have been disregarded. And I hope that changes.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I would like to just thank the, whole FVRL staff for doing a great job. And with regards to all the reviews that you get from the public about, misreferenced, mislabeled books, and you take the time to, go through it. And I'm sure you respond back to the person also who had that issue and, identifying or mislabeled or, whatever it is, correcting that if possible. And, keeping in mind that the libraries are, meant for everybody. And it's not just one person's, concern or what they want it to be. So, always keep that in mind. It's an intellectual property of the community and how it serves the community. Thank you.
Hearing no other comments. Oh,
Is
did
it
I-
appropriate for one of us or more than one of us to reach out to some of these communities that are feeling alienated, such as the letter you're referring to?
I think the danger, Marie, is that then you would be speaking on behalf of the board or on behalf of the district. So I think it's important that, I think what I've heard from this board, at least to date, is that we were going to have a discussion about roles and responsibilities, and I would plan time for that at our retreat. But I think that's something you all need to agree on, is how you might want to do that rather than individuals.
This is Mary Ann, and I want to appreciate the conversation we've had today. My cell phone went blank on me, so I had to go and transfer to my landline. But it's been a really important meeting, I think, in terms of getting some issues out.
Thank you, Mary Ann. The setting of the next regular meeting will be Saturday, March 18th, 2023 at 4 p.m. at Three Creeks Community Library. It'll be a hybrid meeting. Yeah, could I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move that we adjourn.
Any objections?
I'll second.
Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.